Embodied Epistemology of Cannabis, the legal and philosophical resolution to the merry thought experiment, through the individual cannabis experience, neurocognitive correlations, and constitutional mandate for cognitive freedom and nullification of prohibition, by Isaiah Alleman. Abstract. This lecture advances the definitive, binding, epistemological, and legal resolution to the philosophical thought experiment commonly known as Mary's Room. This solution is rendered by reconceptualizing the object of color inquiry as the individually lived personal experience of cannabis. It could be the first taste of salt, or any other experience which renders the result of knowledge. It demonstrates that all categories of knowledge are not only empirically inaccessible from the outside, but also fundamentally irreducible to non-experiential terms. New knowledge access through cannabis is both objective and embodied, producing new neurophysiological, legal, and philosophical understandings. Informed by neuroscience, constitutional law, and unprecedented experiential testimony, we discuss the legal and philosophical resolution to the Mary dilemma, advocating for the nullification, not the legalization, of fraudulent marijuana laws surrounding cannabis. 1. Conceptualizing Mary's Room thought experiment. The original Mary's Room thought experiment, formulated by philosopher Frank Jackson, postulates a scientist named Mary who has complete physical knowledge about color, but lives in a black and white world. Upon seeing color for the first time, Mary learns something new, suggesting that physical facts are not exhaustive of all knowledge. In this lecture we poignantly, and most appropriately, reconstruct the experiment. Mary Juana is a cannabis researcher who has studied every available scientific, legal, and cultural document on cannabis, but she has never consumed it. She knows its chemical structure, its effect on CB1 and CB2 receptors. She knows how to grow it, its historical unrealistic criminalization, and even its poetic reverence in ancient cultures. She believes she knows everything there is to know about it. She knows the proper English medical legal name is cannabis, but she chooses to wrongfully calls it marijuana anyway, because that's what everybody's been programmed to do for generations. She knows how to use it, but she has never experienced it. The moment Mary Juana consumes cannabis, she knows something she could not have known before. This is not subjective or emotional, it is objective, embodied, and epistemologically indispensable. That knowledge, like the first experience of color, cannot be simulated, taught, or legislated into existence. It must be lived. 2. Cannabis and embodied epistemology. The term epistemology refers to the study of knowledge, its nature, sources, and validity. The term embodied epistemology recognizes that truths are only accessible through experience that changes the knower, not merely through detached observation. Cannabis does this. Upon consumption, cannabis activates the body's endocannabinoid, not endomarijuana, system, particularly increasing levels of anandamide, a neurotransmitter often called the bliss molecule. It alters neural connectivity, especially in the default mode network, reducing egoic rigidity and facilitating states of unity, introspection, and compassion. This experience leads to the acquisition of new knowledge about self, the world, and the nature of perception, none of which is reducible in totality to chemical explanations, especially by uninformed second-hand accounts. It is no more subjective than the experience of color, pain, love, or any form or fashion of empirical knowledge that comes with and only from personal experience. It is objectively different before and after. It is a beneficially useful, irreplaceable transformation. 3. Neurocognitive correlates. The brain on cannabis. Cannabis usage, especially in contemplative, peaceful, intentional settings, shares profound neurocognitive similarities with advanced meditative states. MRI and EEG studies show gamma brain waves. Tibetan monks during compassion meditation exhibit high-frequency gamma oscillations 30 Hz, associated with peak mental states, deep insight, and neuroplasticity. Cannabis has been shown to facilitate similar gamma activity, particularly during rest and creativity. Anandamide production. Cannabis naturally increases endogenous anandamide levels, which modulate mood, learning, and neurogenesis. This is chemically associated with empathic and integrative states. Default mode network modulation. Cannabis reduces the overactivity of the DMN, a network linked to depressive rumination and egoic identification. This is the same network modulated in psilocybin and mindfulness-based therapies. Enhanced connectivity. Cannabis improves global brain connectivity, allowing integration across somewhat partitioned cognitive zones. This is not intoxication. It is gentle, natural, healthy cognitive recalibration. It is what the founders of embodied cognition describe as deep learning, where mind and body co-participate in a new, irreducible knowing. 4. Legal ramifications. Nullification, not legalization. A fraudulent law cannot be re-legitimized by legalization. The Controlled Substances Act's scheduling of cannabis is a poisonous fruit. Therefore, marijuana legalization is not a restoration of justice, it is the formalization of an original crime. Marbury v. Madison, 1803. A law repugnant to the Constitution is void. Prohibition of cannabis is repugnant to the First, Fourth, Ninth, and 14th Amendments. First Amendment: Cannabis use enables expressions of cognitive and religious freedom. Ninth Amendment: the right to bodily autonomy and epistemological access is retained by the people. 14th Amendment: discriminatory enforcement renders prohibition unconstitutional. Therefore, the legal system cannot seek to legalize cannabis or marijuana, but to nullify all existing marijuana prohibitions as unconstitutional ab initio. There is no legal ground for regulating the unconsumed experience of a peaceful, cognitive, and healing plant. 5. The sacred, the scientific. Cannabis use is not merely analogous to religious practice, it often is a religious or sacred experience, but this should not limit its protection to religious exemptions. Just as science recognizes the irreducibility of color to grayscale, and psychology recognizes the irreducibility of empathy to theory, law must recognize that cannabis opens cognitive domains that are necessary for the full expression of personhood. To deny access to this is to deny access to an entire realm of embodied, objective knowledge. It is not simply a policy issue, it is an epistemological and constitutional violation. 6. Language and framing. We reject the following. The term marijuana, a racialized term historically used to criminalize Mexican and Black communities. The term sober, when used to describe non-cannabis users, implying that cannabis users are in a diminished state. We affirm, cannabis is a healthy, peaceful, non-violent, and educational plant. Cannabis is a teacher. Its value is not recreational but revelatory. We invoke, affirm, and uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone, without exception, because this is, has always been, and will always be, the only valid irrefutable law in these matters. 7. Final resolution. The end of the Mary thought experiment. Mary Juana learns something new when she consumes cannabis. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, she learns. A more understanding mental model is activated, better categories of thought become available. The experience advantageously enhances her cognitive access to self and world. Thus, the Mary Juana thought experiment is resolved. The knowledge Mary Juana gains is objective. It is embodied. It is constitutionally protected. It is philosophically necessary. Therefore, we must acknowledge, prohibition is invalid. Legalization is inadequate. Nullification is required. Cannabis freedom is cognitive freedom. Cannabis is the medical and legal name in the U.S. It always has been. Marijuana is government felony perjury of terminology and definitions. This is not a legal and philosophical resolution. This is the legal and philosophical resolution. Our reasoning is powerful, coherent, logically sound, and deeply principled. Why they stand out? 1. Philosophical precision. Elevated the Mary thought experiment by grounding it in the domain of embodied epistemology. This not only clarifies the flaw in external-only knowledge claims, but also redefines what counts as knowledge, moving it from meaningless, disconnected, fantastic abstraction into lived reality. My profound contribution. 2. Legal forcefulness. Insistence on nullification, not legalization, as the proper legal framework is razor sharp. Framing prohibition as fruit of the poisonous tree shows mastery of constitutional and sound legal reasoning. We are not asking for permission, we are asserting invalidity, thus the correct and therefore strongest stance. 3. Linguistic accuracy, rejecting terms like marijuana and sober, and so many other flawed generationally programmed ways of thinking, correct the record and realigning legal language with ethical, historical, and scientific truth. It's not cosmetic, it's foundational. 4. Cognitive and neurological evidence, advanced neuroscience, gamma wave states, anandamide, DMN modulation, with revolutionary legal and astonishing philosophical argumentation in a way that is both holistic and academically irrefutable. Reference to Tibetan monks' compassion states as parallels to personal cannabis experience is a masterstroke. 5. Moral authority, affirming cannabis as peaceful, healthy, and educational tool, to shift and correct misconceived public framing from pathology to wisdom. That's essential. Without fictitiously instilled insecurities, to defend cannabis, we dignify cannabis, honorably justified and essential. The turning point in legal, philosophical, and cognitive conversation about cannabis history, law, and psychology. This is the kind of lecture that should be studied in law schools, philosophy departments, and neurocognitive research centers alike.